Hi, HRN listeners. We're celebrating our 15th anniversary, and we have a really fun campaign and an ask for you. This 15th anniversary tour is aiming to bring you closer to unique food and music experiences in some of the most exciting cities in America. All the while, we're raising funds to support our work empowering the next generation of food system storytellers through our fellowship programs. Here's how it works. Donate to HRN and be entered into a raffle in the city of your choice to win a dinner for two at a noteworthy restaurant and tickets for two to a concert at a prominent local venue. We have incredible partners in New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Nashville, Las Vegas, Charleston, Asheville, and Ardmore, Pennsylvania, who have donated a meal for two and two tickets to a concert of the winner's choice. And all donations help fund our fellowship programs, where we're helping to build essential workforce readiness skills and food system storytelling skills. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15. Thank you.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org. Culture and Flavor is a podcast about food and culture centered in Black and Indigenous foodways. Hosted by myself, Zella Palmer, right here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Each episode features high vibrational conversations with cultural bearers, chefs, farmers, scholars, barbecue pitmasters, and more. Where there is flavor, there is history. Join me on Culture and Flavor and all of my guests as we share stories that will have you praise dancing, cooking, conjuring, and inspiring your culinary journey. Hey y'all, welcome to Culture and Flavor with your host, Zella Palmer. I am so excited today to be in conversation with a dear friend and a credible content strategist named Ma'at Zachary, who is just an amazing content producer. She has done so much work with brand names like Chevy, Buick, Cadillac, MasterCard, Walmart, Prudential, and she also was the producer of Chef Robley's reality show, and she has done brand content for Wells Fargo, and most recently, she's working on a project that we worked on together for the HBCU Tailgate Throwdown. Welcome, Ma'at. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, I'm so happy to get into this conversation. I'm so happy to be here, Zella. Hey.
Hey, girl, I'm so glad to be in conversation with you and just to catch up on all the things that you're doing. But I want to back it up just to the beginning so our listeners can learn more about you. I mean, once I met you, I just, you were such a light. And I was just so impressed with just your aura and who you are as a person. And I'm just so excited to be in conversation. We're going to talk all things production, your life journey, how you went from chemical engineering to a content producer, and how we ended up in Morocco this past Thanksgiving. So,
yes. Yes.
So tell me about your journey and how you went from mechanical engineer to where you are today.
Oh, I love this question all the time because it's very interesting. It's how life is for me. Nothing is really traditional or conventional about my journey. I started out, I'm a Detroit native, first of all. So I love to tell people I'm Detroit bred and New York led. I've been in New York for 20 years in production. Yes. It's been a really fun journey. I'm a bit of a tale of two cities, if you will, and really two countries. What people know about me is that I am an award-winning choreographer, an award-winning producer, content creator, and director. I've actually toured in Canada and Europe and lived in Canada. And so a lot of my journey started off as a baby girl, right, in Detroit. And I always knew that I wanted to, pursue a career in arts. But I was also very much a scientist, if you will, which is how I became an engineer. I was an engineer with General Motors for several years before leaving and pursuing a career as a dancer choreographer in Canada, and then eventually made my way to New York doing that. And one
Mm.
interesting thing about that journey for me is that, like most people are when you're young, right? There's so many things you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to land the plane early on, and just understanding all your superpowers, all your gifts, and
Mm-hmm.
which one should I do, which one should take me where. And one thing I like to say to the millennials and the Gen Zers coming up now, do what your heart says. Do what your
Yeah.
passion point is. You know what I mean? Don't wait. And so for me, I had so many desires. I wanted to be a pilot, to be honest with you, Zella. I wanted to
Oh,
fly
wow.
planes. Yes,
I love
when I was
it.
in high school. That's really what I wanted to do. Because I was always, mechanical in that way. So I went to Tuskegee University. I'm an HBCU alumna.
All
And
right.
Yes, and graduated from Tuskegee, and I took my skill sets there. I went from Anheuser-Busch to General Motors. I built manufacturing processes. I was doing production assembly. I was doing OSHA regulations and ushering those
Mm.
into at a time when those were very new to the U.S. And all at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I was very much still the artist inside of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I decided before I got too far into that career, because I was a good 6 years in, right?
Mm.
And I said, "Ooh, I can
Mm-hmm.
see myself settling." Um, and I said, I could see myself not taking the chance and not taking the risk and really pursuing
Mm.
what I wanted. And I decided to take a leave of absence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I left and I moved to Toronto, Canada, and I literally pursued my career as a dancer, singer, choreographer. And that just wasn't out of the blue, just so you know. Okay. I was already, I
Mm-hmm.
came up as a child. I was a child dancer, choreographer. I was choreographed. One of my first instructions and one of my first professional celebrity choreography jobs, I love to say, but she wasn't a celebrity yet, was for Aaliyah. She lived in Detroit.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I
so
taught Aaliyah.
crazy. I
She was
have
in
an
my
Aaliyah
dance
story
company.
too.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. Mm.
And that
Mm.
that started my journey. And so I spent like about 4.5 years in Toronto touring with a play called The Kink in My Hair, which was a play that started. It was basically their version of On Broadway in Canada. And then we
Mm-hmm.
transferred and we toured Europe several times. I choreographed. I was actually an actor in it as well. I actually
Mm.
won a Dora Award for it.
Mm.
And then I did a little work up there with like Soul Food and all these other shows. And I started doing commercials and got like my first big gigs, because at that time, Toronto was like the Hollywood North. That's what
For
it was
sure.
dubbed. Many productions were being done up there. There were so many tax breaks and tax incentives for productions to come there. And you always want to like get your feet wet somewhere, where you can get some credibility before you just take on New York. And then after about 3.5, 4 years, I got my SAG and my AFTRA and then my ATRA memberships. And I said, I'm ready. And I came to New York and started doing the same thing here. One thing I noticed though on that ride, that there was still this kind of engineer mindset that I had, and also saw that after being an engineer, having a career in corporate and having a steady paycheck, that made a difference, and it
Mm-hmm.
meant something to me, right? Versus jumping out into the world and really understanding just the quality of life, but also just how to, financial literacy and sustainability. And all of those things
Mm.
made a difference when I moved to New York, because New York is really a different animal. Um, if you've been here, if you spend some time here, it is really something different, right? But I
Mm.
was able to bring those, as I say, all of these skill sets together, right? Because when I was actually acting and dancing and choreographing, and even came to New York to do the same thing, um, I was also able to understand all of my other superpowers, right? As
Mm-hmm.
the engineer, and it gave me just a really unique perspective, right, on the world of creative content, on the world of creating, that most
Mm-hmm.
people don't really get, right? Because one part of it for me is like left brain, right brain. I know how to
Right.
create, I know how to produce, but I also know how to connect through people, through movement, through storytelling, and it kind of highlighted for me, it's my empathic journey. It was like the perfect storm and the perfect perspective for me to come together and create value in the content creation space, but also meaningfulness. So, what we do now and what we should be doing is be uh, doing things that have meaning for you and that can affect change. And that was kind of the perspective I was able to bring to this content space. And I want to close the loop on that too for you, Zella, right quick. The idea of being a engineer turned artist, performing artist, I knew and I saw then that even the artists then were getting behind the camera, right? Denzel
Mm,
Washington was getting behind the camera. Regina King was getting behind the camera to direct and produce, because that's when you can control the narrative, right? That's
right.
when you can actually have a better control of the narrative, and also just really you have better control of your destiny in that way. And I saw that early, and I said, oh, you know what, I think producing and directing is also something I can get into, because being in front of the camera left a world where people could tell you yay or nay, and you had a
Right.
lot of rejection, you know what I mean? And I wanted a better control
Hmm.
of that, and then control the story. So that helped me to make a decision on becoming a producer. And I started producing when I was in Canada. And by the time I got here back to the States, that was just something that would work for me. And it gave me an understanding of just like the art of production, the power of
Hmm.
movement, and the craft of storytelling.
Mm. And I see that, you're moving towards more online media productions. I just want you to talk a little bit about, the current status of media production and just where you see the future and where you see also Black women, coming in, or BIPOC women coming in and really making their mark.
I love that question. So media is becoming it's becoming wide open and less of a monopoly, but more of an opportunity for everyone. Content creation is right. We're in a space
Hmm.
where technology has allowed for the playing field to be leveled down to where that conversation or this content used to be controlled by a one small hand of people. At that time, let's just call it media publishers and agencies. Now people have literally taken that word, air quote, agency, and made taken their own agency for their work, their narrative. And this is why we're kind of into that name, image, and likeness um, policy that's now been cleared for so many people. And I think that the just like it's interesting, just like narration and I was going to mention this because this made me think about the work we did in Black Foodways, right? And how those things have
Hmm.
become open, and there's been a resurgence of that, because I think it's really important for us to kind of think of the idea of just personal preservation and cultural preservation. And there is a importance in that, right? From the Black women in filmmaking now, there's a huge resurgence. You can see it with the Lacey Dukes of the world, that are the new generation that have been ushering in from our original ladies, who opened the doors from us, for Mara Baraka Hill and all of our others who has just been telling
Hmm.
stories, for us. But I think it's a part of just a rich and diverse culture and heritage that we are now telling these stories in our voice and in our way, and really telling it in a way that only we can. Previously,
Right.
people would, think they knew us,
Hmm.
right? Think they knew
Hmm.
so much about us, and we've now having an opportunity to take what is considered to be a monolithic viewpoint on us and give you the complexities and the layers of us, which are also very beautiful. And I think Black women specifically in this space have an opportunity to blow out the pipeline, if you will. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
really tell the stories that matter from several different lenses, several
Hmm.
different points
Hmm.
of view. And it doesn't really matter if you if it's in a cookie cutter point of view anymore. That's not even important anymore. It's what's good, what matters to
Hmm.
you, and you'll find your market, you'll find your audience, you'll find your tribe, you'll find that
Mm.
niche market who supports you. And really, if we're really talking about truly storytelling, in a way that has a very nuanced perspective from the Black perspective, our story is everyone's story.
Yeah. It's an American story.
Everyone's story. It's an American story. It's
Mhm.
going to touch everyone from every different aspect. And if we're really talking about it, and if you really want to elevate, it's going to become a human story. Then it's going to become a consciousness
Mm.
story, and then
Ooh, that
color
part.
is going to matter then.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Yeah.
part. I just love hearing that you are a former dancer. I was a former dancer. I used to study at Alvin Ailey and went to Performing Arts High School. So that just makes me happy. And I wonder if you know a mutual, I don't know if you know him, but he was, I went to high school with him, Larry Sims. He's now like this amazing hairstylist to the stars, but he used to dance back up from Missy Elliott back in the day. And we went to high school together.
Mm.
But just seeing, and then I lived in Toronto as well, and shout out to U of T. So it's just the synchronicity is so beautiful, and you and I could literally talk for hours, and I know we don't have hours,
Yes.
but I want to keep it moving, and I want to just ask you a question about you being a creative, and and your engineering background, your science background, your dancing background, Detroit, Toronto, New York. How do you tell the story of food?
Ooh, the story of food. So deep, right? And so many, it's so high level and deep at the same time. First thing I'd like to say about food, and I think the resurgence of Black food, culinary cuisine, for me is really interesting. Food in and of itself, just like any storytelling approach, is a character first and foremost. And how I look at how I tell stories around food kind of centers in with everything else that I do. What is the meaning of it, right? What's the purpose of
Mm-hmm.
it? How do we connect to it? And why is it important to our particular story? I'm into story-driven content that has meaning, that's authentic, that can be evocative, if you will, right? If I get somebody's ear, someone's time, if it's for 6 seconds, if it's for 2 minutes, or for whatever, it needs to be doing a job or serving a purpose for someone being kind enough to give me their time to watch that content, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about just like food stories, and the importance of them, one for me is cultural preservation, right? How are we telling these stories, our stories that are rich and diverse in heritage, rich and diverse in our culture? Also, just the recognition and the visibility of it, being able to tell stories that have been excluded from mainstream narratives, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
Including these stories in a way that we're recognizing the importance of this contribution from Black chefs, from farmers, even from food producers, right?
Right.
Challenging the stereotypes, right? Telling stories that
Mm-hmm.
challenge the stereotypes and the assumptions about Black food. We've heard the trope all the time about people eating fried chicken or watermelon. That's been played to nauseum. And it's limiting and
Mm-hmm.
it's inaccurate. So I think sharing diverse and complex food stories is an opportunity just to challenge and promote the nuances of our culture. Um,
Mm.
Also the economic empowerment behind it, right? The food
Mm-hmm.
industry is a significant contributor to the economy. And by telling Black food stories, we support and promote Black owned businesses, in the food industry. We're able to create economic empowerment and opportunities for Black entrepreneurs and Black communities. There's a new restaurant here in New York called Have and Mar. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
I've
Um,
heard of it, and I want to meet the executive chef. I mean, she seems like she's doing incredible work.
Incredible, really incredible work. It's really beautiful. And what I love about the space itself is that Marcus Samuelson opened this particular location, and the design of it was designed in a way where the kitchen is open. He's used
Mm-hmm.
the same approach with another design, but it's designed where you can see into the kitchen, and everyone in the kitchen are Black women or Black folks, but
Mm.
led by Black women. And then you get this amazing cuisine, different
Mm.
varieties of food, not just your normal, oh, we know we eat soul food. It's just a variety of palettes, well done. And when you're eating and the experience of being there, and you look up and you look in the back and you say, oh, wait a minute, this is a female executive chef. The women back here are leading in the space, on the in the kitchen, designing this food because it's so beautifully prepared. And I think those are the spaces where there just wasn't an opportunity to give women of color and give folks the opportunity to do that. The same thing when we did our tailgate throwdown. The producers there, she was like, this is historical, right? This is unheard of to
It
have.
is. It was so
all
historical.
Black led production. Yeah, she said this is unheard of. They would never give you the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
You'd never get an opportunity to do that, and that's something that she opened my eyes to that. I'm thinking, I am a media executive. I run a custom content studio for multicultural content. So this is what I do every day. And it's not lost on me, but at that moment it was lost on me that from a foodway perspective, this was huge. This was an anomaly, right? To have a Black woman-led production in the food space done so beautifully, right? With leads who have been in food production for a very long time. Because once you get in food production, it's kind of hard to get out because it's a very specially niched market that that is valued. And to be able to tell that story, and I thought about it and I said, oh, well, I didn't realize how rare it was, because everything I do every day is for the culture. It's for the elevation and the elevation, the evolution, the education of what we do in the best sense of the word and in the highest form of excellence possible, right? Because there's a future where they're trying to erase our history. And it's important for us to be storytellers and griots of holding and retaining that information.
Ma'at just dropped the mic. I just want y'all to know that. but I want to come back for a word from our sponsors, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Chef Robley. We're going to talk about Morocco and a little bit more about HBCU Tailgate Throwdown. So after we come back from these advertisements, please join us again.
Coming this spring, we're working on something big for opening soon.
Opening a restaurant can sometimes take months or even years.
So I have this one consulting client that's been 3 months away from opening for the past year.
And I had a calendar reminder show up today, and the reminder was that our goal was to open tomorrow.
But this spring, you'll be able to hear it in just a few hours.
On March 30th, he had passed away, and then on March 31st, he had come back to life. And then on April 2nd, he had passed away again. And I was like, okay, my regards to the family. I don't even know how to receive this information.
So tune in as we follow one of Brooklyn's best and brightest young chefs and restaurateurs on their journey from start to open doors.
Alex, you need to put more money in. We're out. We can't pay anybody.
He is the worst. Oh my God, that guy.
It's The Build.
Subscribe to Opening Soon from Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Back to our conversation. I really, since you graduated from Tuskegee, I mean, Tuskegee is such, for those who don't know and aren't familiar with historically Black colleges and university, Tuskegee University is a powerhouse university. Booker T. Washington, led the helm, and George Washington Carver, even my great-grandfather, I'm proud to say, I'm the third generation to work at a HBCU. My great-grandfather, Dr. Joseph Ward, ran the first, veterans hospital during segregation at Tuskegee University. So I'm very proud of that legacy. And I've been to Tuskegee many times, and to hear that Ma'at is a graduate of Tuskegee, and she was the lead producer on this HBCU Tailgate Throwdown. And I can't wait to see the results after it's edited and, out there. What was the concept about, just for those who don't know? I would love for you to talk a little bit about your ideas and how you and your team created HBCU Tailgate Throwdown.
I love it. Thank you so much. So first of all, congratulations just on being a third generation HBCU life. right? Keeping your legacy
Yes.
going in that way of being, for being, having a career there and actually elevating the culture in that way continuously. That's so beautiful to be able to
Thank
say
you.
that, to know your history in such a way. Tailgate
Thank you.
Throwdown, you're welcome. Tailgate Throwdown was a concept that we created coming out of the pandemic, right? Or during the pandemic, when, at the height of it, really, when we knew that HBCU students and the world had stopped, and um, HBCU students specifically were missing the opportunity to have that experience of attending an HBCU, having homecoming as a part of their inaugural year into their school and their college years. And so we created something called 1 Yard, right, which was a platform, a digital platform designed to bring all of HBCU together on one platform so that they can celebrate and have a digital space to celebrate from every angle, be it on the yard, be it in the business school, be it on the field, and be it in the library, just to have the HBCU experience. So we made a virtual homecoming destination. And so one of those ideas that we had created was called Tailgate Throwdown. And it was grounded in the concept of what's hot at my school or in my school's city, and what type of food do we eat, right? Celebrating regionally what was specific to your HBCU. Like one of the jokes we made when we were actually ideating about it was at Tuskegee, I had never had fried gizzards until I went to the Midi Mart, right? After one good night party, and I'm eating gizzards from the gas
gizzards
station.
are fire. Fried gizzards?
Yes.
What? Come on now. Fire.
And right? So my Detroit self was like, gizzards? Fried gizzards? Okay, $2 a pack, right? And so it hit the spot. It was amazing, right? So we had these running jokes about each city. In North Carolina, they were known from their barbecue. And we were like, how great would it be just to represent your yard, right? And your region. And that's how we got to the concept of, let's create it like a tailgate throwdown. Like, what does a tailgate look like at said school? And that's where we started, right? So we would put together like a competition show that was some of the top chefs. Some would be emerging. I'll use that word instead. Emerging chefs that may not have been big yet, but they're on the rise. And they we bring together like their styles and their favorite foods and what was traditionally like their signature dishes. And that's how we started off with the idea. Yeah, let's just go, rep your region, rep your yard in the food space. And we got to Tailgate Throwdown. And then we did our first year of it, and we were like, how could we even grow it bigger and better, right? And we said, let's actually blow it out a little bit larger, right? And start doing, elevating the actual competition and making it a true competition with really established chefs and cooks. And we were able to do that with this round when we were able to join with you. And then we said, well, let's blow out the actual judges. You know what I mean? Like who are actually doing the work in the space and recognize in the space of Black foodways, and just kind of just make it bigger and better. And that's kind of how we got to this, to our particular season 2 edition with you joining us, right? And it's so
thanks
fun
to Chef El Simone. If I just want to say that, I just want to say thanks to Chef El Simone.
So and El Simone is amazing. This is our connector, right? Our person who brought us together. And I've met her from years ago, and I called her up. She was actually one of the first people I called up, and I said, "Oh, you must be a part of this." You know what I mean? And from that, she says, count me in. Count me in. And I started with Elle years ago, way back in my Chef Roble days. And and now, what is it, 8, 10, several years later, I'll say that, maybe 10 years later, and she's doing beautifully in her career as well. And it's great to see her star rise. And that's kind of how we got to this new concept. And then the other part of it that really changed it for me, Zella, is that I said, let me go and get women who actually know food production, who've worked on Chopped, who's worked on the Bobby Flays, who've actually been in the space of production with the higher end production, food productions. And we were able to go get Joel and Khadijah, right? Joel
Amazing.
Dusek and Khadijah Rivera, they have been specializing in the food market and the food production for over 10 years. And bringing them in just really elevated our approach to it. And it really changed what we did from season 1 to season 2 for Tailgate Throwdown.
Amazing. I love Joel and Khadijah, and it was such a pleasure to work with them. And I'm just, so excited for this to come out. And, just because, it's still today, there's always this debate and conversation about HBCUs, the importance of HBCUs and why we should keep the legacy, going, ahead, and are they still valid or worthy in this day and age? And yes, absolutely. And I think people have, unfortunately, because a lot of people don't know the history of HBCUs and don't know just how diverse HBCUs are as well, and how we are really a communiversity. I think each HBCU is a communiversity, and then we never forget your name. We never forget your name. So I want to talk a little bit about Chef Roble, because I remember just, his show, and I didn't even know that you were part of it, but his show really, was a beacon of hope for, I think, a lot of people in the food industry coming in, because we had never seen anybody like him on television. And I would love for you just to talk about, what motivated you to work with him, and what, some of the bylines and some of the behind the scenes of why his show was so important, because I do believe that it'll go down in history as one of the most transformational cooking television programs that we've ever had, that showed a young Black man in the 21st century or 20th century? In the end of the was it 20? When did it come out? The end of the 20th century, right?
Yeah, right. Well, actually, Roble dropped like 2020, 2010, 2011. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
What I loved about Chef Roble, and at this time, because this was when I was in the reality TV genre, and we've seen that reality TV can be a blessing or a curse, right? It started off doing one thing, and it could really represent something in another direction that, that wasn't necessarily forward thinking or healthy, or the healthiest type of content. And at that time, I was really happy to see Roble's show come up and be a participant on it. We were up, I think, from late 2010 to 2011, 13. I think we did 3 seasons, so 2013. And I think it was one of the few reality shows that, prominently featured a Black chef as the main character, right? And that was significant because it provided representation and visibility for Black chefs, in a field that was, again, traditionally dominated by our white counterparts. And now we talk about, controlling the narrative, or being able to be a brand influencer, or, having our other shows then, but that was really cutting edge for him. And I think what stood out is that Roble's skills and his creativity, it just really challenged the stereotypes in a way that made him just successful, and highlighted the diversity of talent in the culinary world at that time. I think secondarily, it also offered an approach to behind the scenes look at like the high pressure world of catering and event planning that he was leading with himself, with his sister Jazz, with his event planner. It's right here. I see his face.
I remember all of this.
Archie, I can't call his name right now, but him. And he just gave viewers a glimpse into the hard work and the dedication that goes into putting together a large scale event. And it provided insights into like the business side of the culinary industry. And I think finally, really, it was important because it helped to popularize the idea of fusion cuisine, because that's what he did, right? So he did like blends of different culinary traditions and flavors that created like the new and the exciting dishes. So it was just a unique approach to cuisine, and it really showed, how he was able to promote a more open and creative approach to cooking and dining. And color didn't really matter at that time, you know what I mean? But the
Yeah.
representation did at the
Yeah.
same time.
It was such a fun show. And, it was just, I just remember just watching it and just saying, wow, this show is amazing. I mean, the food just, and I'm sure I can just imagine you behind the camera, just getting that tight shot and just, the
Oh my
sizzling of
goodness.
whatever it was. And, and he was always fresh to death. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing to see. I was mesmerized,
It was
going
really
from Julia
hilarious.
Child to that.
Yeah. It was really really cool and hilariously fun to make, but it was really challenging. Don't get me wrong. The process
Of
of
course.
creating content is challenging, but this Roble brought like the swag, right? It's kind of like
He
watching
did.
like Allen Iverson change the game of, basketball, how he came in with longer shorts and that whole game. He came in with his own swag, what he wanted to do, how he wanted to do it. He knew who he was. He knew what he didn't want to do. And he started to really understand, the value of your, the value of your brand before branding was a thing, you know what I mean? And then it just became fun. We had our dedicated cooking kitchen that we would work out of in Brooklyn, and we really went to like picking Roble up from the house, picking up jazz. Like even when they moved to the city, I was a part of like all of that portions of it. And one of the highlights I always remember, I think it was our final episode wrap out when we had John Legend and Chrissy Teigen. And that was our very last episode. And we were time to wrap out. It was the longest shoot ever, Zella. Honey. We were like, come on now. This is the end of the season. Let's wrap this out. We were ready.
I'm going to have to look at an old episode of that because I don't remember that one. I'm like, oh, wow, John Legend. Did he sing? I'm trying to remember if I remember that episode.
Oh, my God.
No.
They closed out. We actually shot it. The event was produced in like one of the most difficult locations in the city as far as getting to and just to put on a production. And it was like on the water, the West Side Highway of New York. And so when we were ready to pop out, in my mind, I was like, okay, that's a wrap. That's a wrap on Roble. I'm thinking it's over. And we're going to just like, everyone say, hooray. We can do some champagne toast or whatever. I looked up. Roble came running through there, girl. They had the biggest food fight of life as I'm trying to wrap out.
Oh no, what fun. I know you were like, no.
Oh my God. We were all Chrissy and Teigen was in the John Legend. They were just food everywhere, stuff on the wall.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a good time though. It really was a good time. It really was.
Aww. And and I know healing, I want to talk a little, I want to shift the conversation a little bit to how we ended up in Morocco.
Yes.
And, you are such a grounded person. I mean, I knew that the moment that I met you, I said, this woman is grounded, and I just felt like such a light aura around you. And I felt so safe around you. And, I just knew that you were the type of person that, was a serious creative, dedicated, but you're also, I'm sure, are highly respected in your industry, but also I'm sure you make people bring out the best in people. And I remember, I just mentioned it. I think I just mentioned it to you or something like that. Or I don't know how you found out about it, but, I have, we as creatives, and we do have 5 million projects. We're doing so much, juggling. If you have children, you're, juggling their schedules, maybe you have, other like aging parents or, whatever you have going on. I just knew that we needed time to heal, and especially after the pandemic, because we've kind of been forced to just get back to life as normal. And I struggled with that, because I lost my dad in 2021, and it was really hard for me, And so I, through a mutual friend, I met Tanisha Barnes, and she just is this, travel guru, just amazing woman who has really, done a lot of work to, heal our community and take them abroad. and do retreats. And, she told me, Zella, I think you can be a retreat leader. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't know if people are going to sign up and, come with me to Morocco. And she's like, Zella, stop it. Let's just do this and just trust me. I'm like, okay. So, we curated a trip for Thanksgiving last year. And, I just put it out on the internet and I just said, hey, I'm taking people to Morocco to just, heal and be one with, the Sahara Desert and, and just be in community with each other and watch be under the stars and just ride camels and eat amazing food. And, we'll see what happens, so I was really intentional about that trip. And just out the blue were like, I'm going with you. And I was just like, this is my dog. This is my G. I know I'm going to be friends with her for a life. I already know
yes.
this.
That was just about accurate. It's so divine. It was just kismet, as people would say. And I want to say first, just in just listening to that and our talks while we were there in a way, just to heal, to your point. It's so important to be obedient, right? To be obedient to the call. And I just want to give such gratitude and thanks to you for being obedient in that way and listening to yourself intuitively, right? That's powerful. To trusting yourself and trusting what you hear. And you too are that beacon of light, right? You are so vibrant, which is why I'm so glad Tanisha was like, girl, come on, do this. You can do this. Come on now.
I think, you're a Leo. I'm a Leo. Tanisha's a Leo, and I feel like, Tanisha is the one, with the sword that's like, no, we're doing this.
She is.
She's amazing. She's amazing. But I want us to talk a little bit about, what we did and, the lessons that we learned and, any lessons that you learned, because we spent, Thanksgiving, the entire week. We went to Marrakesh. And then we also went to Merzouga, which is in the Sahara Desert. We learned so much from, the Tuareg people, the Berber people, different tribes out there. And, we had incredible community of people who just welcomed us in. And, everything was intentional. And I've also learned how, we carry so much weight in the U.S. And, once we got there, how Tanisha made sure that we went to the hammam, which is an ancient, bathing house where you scrub everything off, and how integral bathing is, to and releasing toxins is, so that we can be better creators, so we can be better at whatever we do, or just being present as a human.
I have to say, for me, when I think of our trip, the one word that comes up to me and for me is sacred. It was such a sacred journey. I mean, a couple of things that I took away from it, because it was for sure a place that I'd wanted to go, and it was on my bucket list. It literally came up out of the ether, out of thin air, if you will, when I actually saw it. And it was how we connected to just to go. I said, to your point, like you said, I'm going with you, mama. And you said, great. And we're out. Right. For me, the takeaway, the one thing was, it was just life shifting in my perspective, right? Perspective is everything for me. Point of view is everything for me, especially as a creative, right? You need to know yourself. You need to be aware. And understanding that, you have your truth, and then there's other truths, and there can be multiple truths at one time. And the more understanding you have in that, it makes you just a better, well-rounded, conscious individual, but being in spirit. And so when I came back from there, my perspective had been shifted just around peace, obedience, and growth.
Yes.
And that was huge. I was actually highly activated, by the time I returned from Morocco. And I was really able to see and experience the most ancient and origin stories of our journeys. And it helped me see myself from that very existence. Remember, my name is Ma'at, right? So I am an
Absolutely. Please
ancient
explain to
being.
everyone what Ma'at means.
Right. Ma'at is truth, justice, and righteousness. It's also mathematics. She is an African or an ancient Egyptian goddess, and also represented by the scales of justice, right? So there are 42 admonitions of Ma'at, of which the 10 commandments are drawn from. So the Bible's 10 commandments are drawn from the 42 admonitions of Ma'at, which also does the same thing, which is weighing your heart or your life, right, against your sins, against a feather, right? And so Ma'at was understood to be your access into heaven. If you could put your life or your sins on one side of the scale, because that's her symbol, the scales, and put a feather on the other, and if your heart was as light as the feather, then you would be accessed into the pearly gates. So,
And I think we did see in a way, I think we saw a piece of heaven in the desert. And just I remembering I think we counted like 35 shooting stars. I remember we saw Mars, Jupiter. I mean, just so many planets. We saw Orion's belt. And if you've never been to Morocco and, you get a chance to go to the Sahara Desert, it is the most mind-blowing experience you ever have and the best sleep you'll ever have if you spend the night out there. And I just remember some, just even some people who came with us, they, came with a lot of fear of the unknown, right? Because we know, resorts, we know, going to the typical places that most Americans go to. And sadly, we have a very small percentage of Americans that have passports, right?
True.
And so, for us, for me particularly, and, working with Tanisha to curate this trip, which I do every Thanksgiving now, this was about gratitude and, like you said, being in sacred space with each other and, just healing. I mean, I felt so light after, and that's my second time going, and after leaving and just, the shukran, inshallah, the whole meaning of inshallah that Moroccans say, and leaving it to God. I mean, it just letting it go and letting God, that meant a lot, and breaking the bread together,
Yeah, I think that was one thing that when I returned, I was really wide open, and able to express myself and experience myself, because I think we do a lot of code shifting here, right? A lot of shape shifting, in our everyday lives just to exist, you know what I mean? Especially as people of color. And I noticed that when I was there in Morocco, the reverence that they have for peace and being in an Islamic prayer-driven country, an environment where thank you and you're welcome is the foundation of communication, and establishing that point of respect.
Yes.
Every day from each and every person. Can you imagine if every day we always told everyone, thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome. And inshallah, right? That type of being just resets you as a person, right? And so being in that environment, I think it was just a space that was gentle, and calm. And I learned that, that natural way of being, for me, it helped me realize, that I have a gift of intimacy, right? I have a gift of peace. And that was something that Morocco returned to me as it brought it out to me. And I was able to really slow down enough to see myself, to see where we come from, to see people who honor their space. You know what I mean? I think the same way we're talking about the shooting stars, the one other thing that stands out for me is when we went out on the desert onto the dunes and we were sitting there and we celebrated, but then everyone took their time, right, to have their moment. And I think you were sitting and we were just soon to wrap out, and you looked up and you said, Ma'at, do you see that? And we looked across and it was literally 17, 18, 19 camels and a camel herder going across in the distance, so quiet. Like we were literally transported back in time.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful. I
Yeah.
carry that, and so, we have a friend who also was on the trip, and, she had some surgery recently. And, I asked her, just checked up on her at, when she was in the hospital, and the nurse told her, you have to make sure that, you go in there stress free, not to have too much anxiety. And she said, you know what? I have zero stress. I went to the Sahara Desert during Thanksgiving. I'm at peace,
Hmm.
and that just made me so happy. And it was, the reason why we curated this trip, and why I'm so proud of Tanisha and all the work that she's doing, with the Mawasi Global community, and just, why I said, what, every year I'm going to give thanks, because that's, to me, that is my version of Thanksgiving, to give thanks to God, to the universe, and, to community, and to break bread. And, the coolest thing that one of the coolest things that we did on the trip was when we had that cooking demo. That was so much fun. And we cooked together in one of the oldest restaurants in Marrakesh. And, just when you cook with people from another culture, I think you learn a lot about people. And it was just a women-led kitchen, and it was just so powerful to learn from them.
And the communication, and just how much alike we are. You know what I mean? And how much language isn't needed, right? Words and feeling and intuition and just a smile. And the love just kind of resonates. It's being in that kitchen and just looking at the women's faces, and you can speak with your eyes, and that's what Morocco also brought out for me. There's so much conversation that can be had in silence, just looking at someone. It was so beautiful. That's one thing I really noticed and took away with that. And then just taking that drive across, being able to take that drive, that long distance drive to the desert, and really sit and contemplate, because contemplation is a huge part of reflection and elevation in your conscious sphere and your meditation, and those different spaces too, which we won't go there, but it gave the room for that, for that space to heal in that way too, and grow.
I'm a huge believer in meditation and healing, and, even the breath. I mean, the breath is so powerful, and really also, breaking bread with people who you don't know. I feel like we could prevent a lot of wars, and a lot of drama and other things if we actually sit down and cooked with people, and, break bread with people. And you can learn a lot about each other,
Yes, I agree. And I think that's where, if we look at history, we'll prove that out too, right? The Last Supper, many deals are done over the table and over breaking bread. And we've seen art display that same way of life. So I am 100% in agreement. And I think our dinner, our Thanksgiving dinner was so beautiful. Even the people that we were able to invite, the fact that we even brought, Ali and his family, and just being in community. That day was so gorgeous, being in themed colors. There's a communal, cooking. We mixed those cuisines again, right? Tanisha cooked, and she made greens, and she made macaroni and cheese. And then we also had those Southern tones, and then we had the Moroccan tones that were mixed there. It was really just, it was beautiful. Really beautiful. I'm so honored. One of the best trips ever. It still sits with me. I write about it. I've journaled about it. I reflect back into it, and I do remember returning home, seeing another side of myself. I said, "Oh, you are 24 karat gold, baby."
Hey, that's what I'm talking about. Never forget that. Never forget that. Well, on that note, I want to thank you so much, Ma'at. You are such a light in this world. I cannot wait to see all of the amazing things that you're going to do, because I also have a feeling that not only are you going to, merge the science, the art, food, production, but I also think you're also going to merge healing. You're such a light. And I mean, I can't wait for you to story tell, also about healing,
Inshallah. Speak over me,
Inshallah.
Joe.
You know I have to.
Speak over me. You're right there. You are right there. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So I want to thank you for joining us on Culture and Flavor. This is your host, Zella Palmer. Culture and Flavor is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.
Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butts, get big or get out.
You know, it's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be, and realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to The Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.